Welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite, featuring the sharpest minds in marketing, inspirational case histories, and weekly insights you can apply to your business. Find out why top CMOs rank this podcast among their favorites. Now, here's your host, Chief Marketing Renegade, Drew Nizer.
Hey, it's Drew, and I was reading a book review the other day of a new biography on Thomas Edison. And in the New York Times, they talked about how this biographer, for whatever reason, and literally he finished the last sentence of the book, he turns the book in and then he dies. So it's kind of a story in itself, but he writes the book backwards, a la Benjamin Button. He writes it from the very end of Edison's life all the way back to the beginning. And of course, the reviewer wondered why, but that kind of sparked an idea in my mind that I wanted in this show to start at the end, because the end here is amazing. The results that my guest, Jennifer Kyriakakis, I think I already promised I would butcher the name. Jennifer, please pronounce your last name.
Kyriakakis.
Kyriakakis. I knew it. I said it right. Kyriakakis. All right. Awesome. Anyway, Jennifer is the founder and VP of marketing for Matrixx Software. And she won she's a winner of the Entrepreneur of the Year award for her work at Matrixx. But I want to start, Jennifer, let's talk about some of the results that you've been able to achieve at Matrixx. Give us some of the top 5 accomplishments in terms of role marketing plays and driving your business.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having me on today.
Oh yeah, welcome to the show.
So we do business in an area that has been dominated by, a small group of very large vendors for a very long time. And so, coming in as a startup where everybody thought we were crazy, I'll skip to the beginning and then skip to the end. Everyone thought we were crazy in the beginning. We actually, are considered today one of the top 5 vendors in our space. We've managed to achieve over 70% growth for the past 3 years in a row. Marketing itself has contributed, up to 15% of pipeline over the past year. So those are some of the headlines. And I'm also just really proud of our customer referenceability and our renewal rates. We license via a SaaS model, a multi-year subscription model. And we've had 100% renewal rates on that. So, kind of across the board, very excited about the growth, about, just sort of elevating the brand, and then also the customer success and the customer loyalty.
And just for perspective, how many employees, given that 70% growth, how many employees have you added through the course of this last 3 years?
Oh gosh, a lot. I mean, I think we went from, 60 to 250.
Yeah. So, and that's got to be an interesting part of this as well. Okay. So massive employee growth, massive customer growth, reputation in an industry where you were an outlier or just considered crazy for even trying to get there, beyond challenger brand. This is like, hey, over here, alternative to these giants.
Exactly.
Hey, pick us. Okay, so let's break a couple of those things down. 15% of pipeline. Let's talk about that. Yeah. Does that number feel good? And how do we get to 15% of pipeline? Is that a good number?
Yeah, that number feels good for us. We do long, complex sales cycles, big deals, and we do them in a very specific industry. So we are focused on one vertical. So when you think about companies that are selling cross verticals, that are selling to any type of enterprise, that number could be a bit bigger. But for us, where we have a very defined target market, a very defined set of customers, we know who we're going after. 10 to 15% is really, 15% is like the top of what you can expect for pipeline contribution from a
and it's great to have a benchmark like that. With how many if you were to say, first of all, how long is your sales cycle? 12
to 18 months.
Yeah, it's just it's crazy, right?
Right. And it's been longer than that. I mean, in the beginning for us, it was 2 years, because a lot of times we had to sit out the first RFP process because we wouldn't qualify just because we were a small vendor. And so we had to come in on behind the initial process and start a new process. So we've had much longer in the beginning, but these days it's 12 to 18 months.
12 to 18 month sales cycle. And have you sort of been able to figure out in that thing what role marketing plays along the way to help sort of not just sort of get the lead in the pipeline, but sort of nurture it along?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's, it's, as you can imagine, there's touch points across every organization. Every organization has influence on the buying decision, no matter who it rolls up to. It rolls up to different people depending on the organization who makes that decision. A lot of times it's a C-level or a board level decision. And so what we found from the marketing perspective is, you know, there's a tradition of B2B companies being really good at engaging IT and in our specific industry, engaging networks. Where they didn't really focus is engaging the commercial people, the commercial organizations, and the product owners and the business people. And so as a marketing team, we're really focused on how do we nurture that side, especially because those specific organizations have gained a lot of power within and influence within the buying decisions in the past 5 years because of digital transformation. So we designed a bunch of programs to specifically engage and nurture those people.
And are these sort of, if we think about it, so we have the C-suite and the people who are approving, are these the people that are actually using the software?
These aren't the people that necessarily use the software. They're the ones, though, who are trying to grow revenue, who are trying to move that needle and are responsible for whether a product is successful or unsuccessful, and are responsible for concepting new products. So they feel the result of what our software does. If they have a fabulous idea on how to target a new product to a new set of customers, and IT can't roll it out, that's a huge issue for them, or it's going to take too much time and too much money to roll it out. That's a huge issue. And we help take that issue off the table so that they can get their products and services from concept to launch in a month.
Okay. And I wanted to ask about the sort of the basics of first of all, how big a deal are these? I mean, are these $1 million deals?
And bigger.
$1 million deals and bigger. Okay. So it makes sense that it would take that long. And typically with $1 million deal, there's a lot of people who have to sign off on it.
Yeah.
Okay. When you look at most software and SaaS models, it comes down to, you're going to save them time, you're going to save them money, you're going to, or you're going to help them reap financial benefit down the road. Now, all those things sound good, but the reality is most of the time, you're replacing one behavior with a new behavior. You're having to get them to change. And as the folks at Gartner say, you have to convince them that the pain of change, the gain of change is bigger than the pain of change. Let's talk about that in terms of the relevance of that comment to your particular situation.
It's very relevant because we always say we're not in the software business, we're in the change business. You have to want to change the way you're doing business in order to reap the benefits of swapping out systems, right? If you bring in a system and it basically just replaces what the previous system did, what's the point of doing it? Right. And so that's a lot of what the marketing team focused on. We designed a bunch of workshops for commercial people to walk them through, hey, here's the types of products and services that you could be launching. Here's how it would change your operational process, but you have to embrace and accept that change. And here's the kind of results. And I think that was the key to it, right? Here's the KPIs you should be looking at measuring in the short term versus the long term on how not only these new products and services are potentially going to drive more margin and revenue for you, but also how that operational change, the types of KPIs you can look at around affecting that operational and organizational change in terms of how it impacts your end customer satisfaction, how innovative you get to be, right? It's like the pace of innovation. If right now you as an individual product owner can only roll out 1 to 2 products a year, now you can roll out 30. And now it doesn't matter if 25 of them fail because of those changes that you've been willing to make. It's much less expensive for you to concept and roll out products, and therefore it's sort of that pace of innovation opens up, and how do you measure around that?
Wow, I've got so many questions and my mind is spinning, and I want to make sure that the folks that are listening are following along here. So I'm going to break some of these things down, and then we'll take a break and we'll come back. So what we have here is a situation where you're going in the door and saying to these companies, you could do business better. You could get products to market faster. And I imagine that there's a lot of skepticism. I haven't heard of you. I'm like, I don't know who Matrixx is. I mean, it's got to be the case for most of the folks until you are aware.
Right.
I don't know who you are. Why should I believe you?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it's got to be building credibility. It's got to be a big issue.
It's a big issue, and there's nothing else like being able to see, feel, and touch. And that's why there's two solutions to that problem, right? And you have to address both of them. The first one is the see and touch part. So we would always bring in, as a starting point to a new prospect, the end consumer experience as what their customers would experience. And so we bring it live into their hands so they can actually use it, see it. We allow them to say, hey, can you try doing this product and rolling it out? And we'll do it in front of them. And we've had people literally sit there and go, ooh, that's magic.
Yeah.
You're actually doing it in front of me. You're not showing me slides.
Right.
You're not showing me a video. You're doing it in front of me. So there's that see and touch piece of it. On the back end of it, you do have to pick the right first customers, right? As a startup, we had to think about who we engaged with for the first time. And you don't have that luxury, right? Because you're just trying to find those first customers.
Right.
But we did actually walk away from some early deals and stuck with customers who were going to be innovative, who were going to go on the journey with us, and then who were going to support us. Because once you have those few first customers that you can also point to and say, and it's been running there, for 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, as you build up, then, and they're willing to reference and talk to potential prospects. Then once you have both those sides covered, then you can start building that credibility.
That's a perfect place for us to take a break, because I want you during the break to ponder this. When was the last time you turned away a customer? And the truth is, you don't have a strategy until you say no to something. So with that, we'll be right back. Did you know that Renegade Thinkers Unite was ranked number 2 of the top 10 podcasts for CMOs by Crackerjack Marketing? Wow, we're really honored. Now, we couldn't do that without amazing guests, and we've had some amazing CMOs on this show, and also terrific listeners like you all. If you like what we do here, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player. That way, you'll never miss an episode. Also, as a special thanks, I'd like to send you a free ebook on Renegade Thinkers. Now, for that, just email drew@renegade.com. Now, let's get back to the show. All right, we're back, and we've been talking about saying no to customers or prospects, potential customers. And I think I listened to an interview you did with someone else, and we got to this. You were talking about getting customer references and why that was so important. So if we start with the notion that you have to pick the right first customers, which it sounds like you did, how do you then sort of build off of that and continue to have the momentum? Because what's interesting is when you're a startup, you either say, all right, we're going to be really picky, and then we have some time, we have some run, and then suddenly you get a customer or 2 or 3. Now you have a factory floor to fuel, and it's even harder to turn down customers, right? I mean, because we got a pipeline that's about sell.
Yeah.
How do you make sure you continue to get the right customers? And I always was interested in a metric that doesn't really exist, but it's sort of cost per satisfied customer, right? Cost per happy customer, because everybody looks at just simply, cost per acquisition. And to me, yeah, you can acquire a customer, but if it's a bad customer,
churn out, or if it's expensive customer,
it's really expensive. And they're expensive because they're not happy, and that costs you so much time and energy. So how do you, in the marketing process, make sure that you get and you set yourself up for success for acquiring happier customers?
Yeah, I mean, the marketing and sales have to work together on this, right? Because it's jointly developing really the qualification criteria, and we work together on that, where we set forth some qualification criteria and some tools on how to do that involve many different aspects of our customers' business, and it includes political stuff. It includes whether or not there is a change agenda already existing within that organization. Now, again, we go after, we are targeting a finite set of customers, most of which are public companies. So we can, look into their annual reports and see, do some basic qualification around, is there a change agenda going on there? Have they hired, this was a few years ago, did they have a chief digital officer, right? With the whole digital transformation initiatives that are going on, if they hadn't hired somebody to run that initiative, then they probably weren't a great prospect right now, right? Come back, let's go back in a year.
Right. I want to pause on that one because it's so important. And folks always talk about, marketers say, this is really important to us. And I say, well, do you have a full-time person assigned to it? And they'll say, no, it's a part-time job. Then I said, it's really not on your agenda. And what you figured out from a targeting standpoint is if they don't have a CDO, they're not in the transformation mindset, and therefore they're not a good prospect for you. That's fascinating.
Exactly.
So if we go and we say, all right, we now know all this pool of companies that have a CDO and they have a change mindset, what's the insight or insights that you've been able to sort of glean from those types of people that have helped you really close the deal?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we learned was that, not only, well, first of all, these people are trying to affect change in very large legacy organizations that don't want to change, that are resistant to change, but they're also being held accountable in a way that they were never accountable within that industry before. So they had to start showing measurable, progress within 6 months. So it really helped us shape our offering, because we actually worked then to reshape, some of our offerings for, specific types of deals, so that there was a much leaner, quicker way for them to get something in and running. So typically a system like ours with any of the existing vendors, it takes 12 to 24 months to actually put that system in. For us, we figured out, all right, let's find a way to get them up and running in less than 6 months, and to help them also shape what they're going to do with the initial rollout of that, so that they have KPIs that they can immediately start reporting back to the business after those 6 months. So within a 6 to 9 month period, we've made them successful, and they have KPIs they can report back to the business based on the way they've shaped their end offerings to their customers.
And so just so I understand that, in the listener, so in 6 to 9 months, they can have a full implementation and an output as a result of it. So a new product that they were able to at least get.
Or an uptick in customer satisfaction scores, NPS scores, or a measurable, sort of increased spending per customer rate. Mm-hmm.
Got it. All right. I noticed in the interview that another interview, you mentioned NPS as a score for your customers. I'm a little not on the fence right now on NPS, obviously. And the reason I'm on the fence, and I'm curious if you sort of share this, is that it's a moment in time. And particularly in the B2B world, where there's so many factors, and it could be just that moment, right? And it's like, I generally have a great experience on JetBlue, but I usually would give them. But the other day, it was a 7-hour delay. That was a long time. Now, if you had called me that moment, I would have said, no, I'm not so happy about it. But the next day they said, oh, we're giving you a $250 gift certificate, credit. Then, they're pretty good. I forgot the pain. So between those 8 hours, the NPS score would have gone from a 2 to a 10.
Right.
So, and the other part of it is they wouldn't have known why. And
Right.
so what do you do with it? So I'm curious where having stated that position, your turn.
Yeah. So what a lot of our customers do is they actually, it's because these are companies that have millions and millions of end customers like an airline. And they look at specific customer journeys and so that they can compare more apples to apples. So there's something called onboarding, right? Which is how do you sign up for a service through an app, right? That's how you onboard a customer. And so, or, whatever the onboarding process might be, they have to go to a store and sign up. So they take a look at that onboarding process and then they can measure what is the NPS immediately after the onboarding process versus the existing operations, the existing systems that they're working with. And then they can compare apples to oranges or apples to apples, right? So they actually look at it from a customer journey perspective.
Right.
What's the NPS after they pay their first bill? So that kind of thing. And then they can, of course, they're looking at aggregate scores when they then aggregate all that and average it out, like we had a customer out in Southeast Asia who basically launched, a whole new offering on our platform. When they looked at the NPS of those customers versus their existing customers, it was like 25 points higher after a 6 to 8 month period. And that's a huge difference.
Right. That's when you really love NPS.
Right. That's when you really love NPS.
That's really cool.
Well, and it's a leading indicator for them too, right? Because they have looked at it in the telco industry. NPS actually can and does correlate in a lot of times to customer loyalty, to longer customer loyalty and longer customer lifetime value, and even sometimes increased spending. So they have made those correlations, but when you're launching something new, a lot of times those revenue measurements can't be made till a year out, right? So the short term though, you can look at the NPS to see that's if that trend is higher, then you're probably on the right path to driving more revenue as well.
Right. Okay. Those are good. I mean, what I heard that's I think important is if we're just doing NPS once and it's a sort of this big macro number, it's really not that useful. But if you're doing it in a very specific moment in time and you're doing it and you see, oh, well, we just onboarded them. How was that onboarding experience? If the scores were good or the scores were bad in a certain way, we can probably isolate the variables and therefore it does become, it becomes useful. Okay.
Yep.
So as we wrap up this segment, I'm wondering, when you think about customer satisfaction for Matrixx, other than renewals is certainly one, another is obviously their willingness to be an advocate. And I'm curious how you make sure that in what you do, because this is a big problem for B2B brands, how do we get more case histories? That's right? Everybody wants them. What have you done in that area?
Yeah, so, that's always a company-wide effort, right? Obviously, they have to be supported well, they have to be serviced well. There's so many factors that go into that. From a marketing perspective, though, again, when you're in a position where you are helping and enabling people who are oftentimes fighting uphill to affect change in their organization, the more that their success, you can help them be successful, and then those successes get highlighted on a bigger arena, the better for them, right? So it's really finding those advocates who are trying to widen their sphere of influence, and make sure that you're working with them. I mean, like I say, we love to showcase, when our customers, in a customer-centric way. Like, we don't always necessarily even talk about exactly what Matrixx is doing for them. We talk about the innovation they're bringing into their specific markets. And that's the key, is to really focus on their story and their success and how they're changing the industry. And then, obviously, we are helping them do that. But make it you have to make the case study customer centric, right?
There you go. And so they
Lots
want
of
to
people actually forget that. Yeah.
Yes, no, that's true. I mean, every brand thinks they are the hero of their own story, and they're not.
Yeah.
The customer
Right.
is. All right,
The
we're going to take a break.
customer's the
The
hero. Yeah.
customer is the hero. We'll take a break, and we'll be right back.
You've been listening to another great interview on Renegade Thinkers Unite with Drew Neiser. But the value doesn't end there. As a listener, you can download a free ebook from Drew, Renegade Thinkers, interviews with 11 trailblazing CMOs any business can learn from. Top marketing thought leaders and proven executives from Time Warner, American Express, and Chico's, and others. Get your free copy at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook. For listeners only at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook.
Okay, we're back, and we were just reminding ourselves that we will occasionally see case histories where it's all about the software. This software enabled this company to achieve 20% growth. We're awesome, aren't we? And you barely even see the customer. And it's amazing. It seems so obvious, but there's this temptation. Well, we got to tell them what we did, and in truth, you don't necessarily.
And if you're in a challenger brand, if you're in a challenger place in the market, it's almost not a bad thing too, because it creates almost a bit of a mystique around your brand if you focus on the customer. And they go, wow. And I've had analysts come to me and say, nobody quite really understands how you're doing this or what you're doing, and that's actually made us more interesting, right? In terms of just people wanting to engage with the brand to understand more. So it wasn't, that's also not a bad strategy, to kind of say, hey, look at what all these amazing companies are doing, and Matrixx is helping them. And if you want to, learn more, then you have to come talk to us.
So we've got this situation where we have high customer satisfaction, so therefore, and success, and you've changed their business in many ways. You're enabling them to ultimately, what's really cool here is this is less about efficiency and more about future revenue, which is always a great place to be. We work with a lot of cybersecurity companies, and so much of that is about protection, right? And so it's a cost to protect. It's like an insurance policy. And really the side that you want to be on is how do we enable growth? And you're certainly there, which is really cool. So ultimately you can measure your success by a customer's ability to grow their business using your software. Very cool. Great end game. Are there any metrics when you look at your performance that you wish you had?
Any metrics that I wish I had?
Yeah, one of the big issues in B2B is attribution modeling, pipeline and all of this. Pipeline is good. It's still hard to measure.
Yeah.
And it's less important than closing sales.
Right.
Right. What's a metric that you wish you had?
So, I think this is probably not that different than a lot of companies, but we are focused enough. Like it's impossible to kind of get intent data, right? There's just, it's a small pool of people looking for specific things. There's not really intent data that we can leverage in the market. And then I think, sort of the nirvana is always quality of engagement, right? So we are in the process of moving, into a much more focused account-based marketing model. And I think the challenges there are always how much of an organization, where is that sweet spot in terms of what creates a qualified account versus, a qualified lead or a qualified contact. So, sort of figuring out what that MQA is, I think is something that we're working on and trying to figure out right now.
Right. Okay. So you didn't start out a marketer. In fact, when you were at William & Mary, I know you were a STEM student, and then you sort of migrated and so forth. And I think it's really interesting. And I'm wondering, because you didn't grow up a marketer, I suspect you have an outsider's perspective on marketing. So I'm curious, in this role as both founder and head of marketing, what are some of your go-to principles that you rely on? Because again, if I were giving you a challenge initially that you studied, you go, I know exactly how to do that. But as someone who had to learn marketing, I imagine you sort of learned it and you have some sort of building blocks that you have. Can you share some of those?
Yeah, so I think I would categorize them in three ways, right? You have to, I mean, there's the data side of it. There is the sort of, marketing positioning side of it. And then there's the, I would say, almost what is marketing's job side of organizational side of it. I would say on the data side of it, data is good, but it's not the end all be all, and data can be misleading, especially in places like ours where you're doing these big, long, complex deals, right?
Right.
Qualify. Yeah, it's really, really tweaking to get qualified data. I think that's part of it. I think on the sort of positioning and creative side, I just feel like be specific. Like this is what I always get on my team about is don't talk in generalities. Like marketing people tend to rely on marketing speak instead of figuring out how to elevate complex things in a simple way without watering it down. I mean, that's a huge thing, right? And that takes a lot of effort and a lot of focus.
Yeah, let's focus on that for it. Elevate important things without watering it down, but keeping it simple.
Yeah, it's difficult.
It is. Give me an example.
Examples are, a good example today is everyone's throwing around this term cloud native. Cloud native, our application is cloud native, it runs in the cloud, it's blah, 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 right? So when we just recently put out a press release and, it was pushing the team to say, don't just throw the buzzword in there. We need to specifically say, what do we mean when we say cloud native and what this about our product is different? And we can't get sucked down into all the acronyms. Just let's write it and then let's revise it into a language that everyone's going to understand.
Okay, so we're going to keep it simple. We're going to keep it clear. One of the things I'm interested in from our sort of standpoint at Renegade and how we think about things is what we see a lot in B2B is you get down into the features pretty fast and the functions of the thing. And the reality is, and it's really interesting in that Gartner's research, which I've loved, and of course I use it all the time because it supports my beliefs. Isn't that the way you're supposed to use research? But the research was that if you as a company have all these personas and you present your company one way to the finance guy and one way to the security guy and one way to because you think that's the right way to do it, when they all get together, they don't know
what you sell. Yeah.
They don't know what you sell, which means that somehow or other, the marketer has to come together with a bigger idea that holds the brand together. Do you think that's true?
I absolutely think that's true. And we went through that evolution as a company because some of the things that we do when you think about feature function, some of the things that we do already, they exist, they have names, they have complicated technical names in our industry. And so the default was to name the products that. And, we stepped back as a marketing team about 5 years ago now, I guess it was, and went, wait, but we are not just a collection of all this stuff that other people do. We've brought it together in a different way. We've designed, patented technology to sit underneath. We have all these different, so how do we, draw visually and, verbally create a concept of what this product is? And what the solution is that will resonate with everybody. So we actually changed, we changed the name and we changed the visualization of the product about 5 years ago from, terms that everybody in our industry would have heard to digital commerce, which is what we call it today, which actually now is a more acceptable term across industries, but still not something that people in the telco industry were buying. So while it was a difficult transition because people were like, what's that? We don't have one of those, right? We're not sure we need one of those, but at least it gave us a framework to explain to all the different stakeholders what that means to them in a way that would make sense to them. You still have to, there's still a little bit of tailoring, but the tailoring is not around the feature function. The tailoring is around the business outcome, right? Focus on the business outcome, not on the feature functions. So that, that was a huge thing for us. And that actually helped propel a lot of the sales cycles too, because, it gave a very differentiated message for our teams to go in. And it also wasn't like, hey, it's a me too, we're replacing this or replacing that. This is something that you need that you didn't know that you need.
And I think that's really interesting. How long, so you essentially said there's a new category, it's called digital commerce, right?
Yeah.
And that's a brave thing to do for a small company. And it seems like it's a natural thing to do because we're doing something different. But then you have the analysts who want to put you in a category, and all these big companies rely on that. So how did you bring the analysts along?
We didn't fight that. So, that was the thing, is we weren't trying to create a new category for the analysts per se, because who wants to be in a category by themselves? That's not a big category. No. So we walked them through, hey, this is how we're positioning our offering and our solution, and here's why. And does that make sense to you? But we remained in the categories that they had, existing. And they always actually elevated it. It would be funny. Gartner's one of them, right? I mean, they would always say in their report that we branded the solution Matrixx, digital commerce. I think they thought that was interesting because nobody else was doing that. So in every single time we landed in their magic quadrant, that was always highlighted.
Right. In fact, you made it easy for them to talk about you in a differentiated way.
Yeah.
Yay. Isn't that marketing? That's marketing. And it's proof when the analysts sort of pick it up and they go, yeah, that's good language. We like that. In fact, we wish we'd come up with that. So thank you. We're going to probably use it and own it. So that's amazing. All right. Well, we're sort of running out of time. We've covered so much really good ground. We started with, hey, and you didn't talk about this much, but I know from your other interviews, focus is really important. You've mentioned in another interview that you have one persona. And I love that. I've been ranting about personas lately because we've just seen too many clients who have 15 different personas and these long-winded thing, and then they go to sales and they say, okay, here's the way you can talk to each of these individuals and so forth. And nobody is capable of keeping track of all those things.
Yeah.
And so, and as a brand, you sort of dilute things. The more personas you think about, the more likely that you are going to create this diluting effect.
Well, so, we talked about this a little bit before, you and I, that, when you look at account-based marketing, it's not so much about the personas. It's because it's about their specific business and their position in their market, right? Because whether or not you're in IT or the commercial side or the finance side, there's a set of business challenges that are unique to your company. And that's the ones that that they're all thinking about, regardless of what their role in the company is. So it's having that account-based marketing focus without thinking you need to divide it into 15 different personas.
Right. And in your case, there's really is a universe. I mean, it's global, but it's really your universe is telecommunications companies, right? That's your universe. So, and your promise is, hey guys, we're going to help you increase your revenue in this particular way, and we're going to do it with our software. So in some ways we can boil this down. Here are the companies, we're the growth engine. Come find us. Let's talk growth, right? About it. So it's wonderfully simple. Okay. Let's wrap up. For startups in software service companies like yourself, what would be sort of two do's and a don't?
2 do's and a don't. So, again, focusing on brand, at an actual meaningful level, cultural, what's the company culture? What's the, why does the company exist? Focusing on building brand from day one is, I think, a key investment that a lot of startups don't make, right? Because they're focused on technology. And then I think number 2 would be figure out how to invest in ways that make you look bigger than you are. Make those smart investments, right? That's something that, my CEO and I worked a lot on is, all right, what are the right marketing investments early on that are gonna make you look like a bigger company than you are, because you're gonna need that to get in the door so many places. And then I would say on the don't side, when you're that size, when you're that size, nobody externally is going to be able to help you at a cost that makes any sense. So, I don't hire an agency. And that's what I would literally say. Don't hire an agency. Figure out how to do it organically. Make the case to do it organically in the beginning, because, and I'm sure this is going to piss off agencies everywhere, but when, it's not, I don't think it's the right fit when you're starting out.
Interesting. And we don't work with startups.
Right, yeah,
So you're more than welcome, folks, all of you startups out there. But what we found is when companies get to 25 to 50 million, want to get to 500 million,
absolutely.
Then they really need to go to someone who can help them. And thank you for setting this up, who can help them sort of reinvent their story and tell their story in a more imaginative way, because so often when they start out, it is a feature function thing. And they were great. They built a product that had an immediate need that made sense to go, hey, we have this widget and it really works. Don't you need this widget? Whereas later, as they get bigger, now suddenly they need an employee brand. Where they, because they need to add 100.
The recruiting,
Right. And so now the brand needs to stand for more than just, hey, we sold a lot of software. And then you have customer, you need a customer brand where they feel really proud to be associated with you. And then finally you need something that your sales folks can go to that feels more than, again, we're just in the business to sell stuff. So I think you're absolutely right. If you can't figure out where you're going at the beginning, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Because, and I love the notion, it's funny, we're working with a company right now who the third hire was a designer who really understood brand, and it permeates the organization. And it's so cool. It's so powerful when that happens, because it also, in that particular case, it affects UX, and this designer brought a certain elegance and simplicity that often engineers can't do. So anyway, amazing. Love this conversation. Jennifer, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
And to the listeners here, always grateful that you spent the time. If you feel like it, hit me up on LinkedIn. A couple people have suggested individuals or topics that they were interested in. I love that. And of course, if you feel like going over to your podcast channel and writing a review, as the folks at Drift say, give me that 6-star review. That would be awesome. And other than that, until next time, keep those renegade thinking caps on and strong.
This has been Renegade Thinkers Unite, but it doesn't end there. Just go to renegadethinkersunite.com for more and subscribe to the show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll talk with you next time on Renegade Thinkers Unite.